Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi. Friends, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your comments and emails to me, checking up on me. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your practice, of course, but your engagement with our Sangha here online, and the encouragement and tools that I focus on to help us understand the history and the rhetoric of our practice and not losing sight of the very core principles, which are really pretty straightforward and simple. Remember, Buddha or Shakyamunibuddha taught us to use our reason, our critical mind, our sentient mind, to truly observe life and see through the samsaric guises of every moment and attachment and ego, so that we could witness instead the moment-to-moment instantiation of life that we all are experiencing. That at that level, at that fundamental level of life, certainly any other human being are really not other. They're part of the same exact process you and I are both living in, moment to moment to moment. And so whether that person's language facilities and experience agrees or disagrees with you, in truth, that fundament is just an expression of experience. We may use different words, but to plant a flag on every word we say is really, really silly. It's silly. We could use more derisive terms like juvenile or petty or ignorant or stupid. I mean, even Shakyamuni used those words. But not because he was trying to insult the person, but to force upon them reflection. What are you doing? Like when your child runs out into the street in front of oncoming traffic, you grab them as fast as you can and you're upset and you're going, no, do not do that. And, you've raised your voice and maybe you use different words, but all of them are trying to communicate that life and death situations, there is no language to communicate the preciousness of that, other than perhaps Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, yeah? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. You never know, that person walking toward you, whether you know them or if you never met them in your life, they could be on the verge of enlightenment. They could be in Buddha, as you can. And we all know how life is a roller coaster. This constant negotiation of samsara, working against our, right? Mara, Darakuten no Mao. It's all samsara, our engine of clinging and craving, always getting in the way, obfuscating the truth, the core truth, that life is, there are no words for it. It is so profoundly amazing that to just peek for several moments at that essence, that essential truth for ourselves. You cannot look at that essential truth for yourself without seeing the selfness of the cosmos, of all of us. It's that light. That light is almost blinding. Remember, light, photons are not a thing. They're They're an experience of things happening, moment to moment instantiations and amalgamations and obliterations. The energy in transformation leaves in its instantiation, its formation, form and light. Light with which to see the form. This, at its fundament, is life. To experience those trees and the stars and one another in that light. That is the enlightenment we pursue. That is Buddhahood. That is Buddhism. Yes? So, with all of that blah, 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 let's get back to this MahaPariNirvana Sutra. Yeah? See if I can make it through a reading here. Oh, clumsy old man. All right. You know the book. You've seen the cover, although the picture's a little off, but the final version will be accurate. All you can see, there's several edits that need to be done. That's okay. That's the nature of reading a first draft, isn't it? All right. Last we left off, I was offered a couple of words here, and I'll read them again before we set about continuing here. Missing from this tirade is the realization that meeting Shakyamunibuddha should be an internal realization of one's own Buddha mind. Right? I'm always saying Buddhism is about the mind. And so we should remember that when we read these stories, we're not reading about we're reading about what's going on in our mind, yeah? Because Buddha's in here. Buddha-ness it's inherent in everything. Oops. Sorry about that. Rookie move. When I'm away from any equipment now, my memory forgets stuff. I do silly things. Sorry about that. All right. So, these monks, as we can see from these first few chapters of the sutra, continue the illusion of the semblance dharma that Shakyamunibuddha or Tathagata are things or states outside themselves. The Lotus teaching exploded this mythology, right? But here it remains well entrenched. Odd, after 8 years of teaching the Lotus, still, we have to remember a lot of these people may have wandered. They may not have been attentive the whole time, but for whatever reason, they know he's passing away. The announcement went out. He's about to enter parinirvana, so they want to make sure they ask these questions that maybe has plagued them for 40 years of his teachings, yeah? So, okay, we can understand that. But then again, we also are made to understand these are teachings to explore all levels before he leaves. So, although these first couple of chapters may seem a little annoying at the level of questions and discourse that we should already know after reading the Lotus, wait till we get some of the future chapters. You're going to wonder, is this the same sutra? Again, I remind you, sutras are collections of written translations of memorized sermons, right? Dialogues, storytelling, lesson making, right? So, continuing with this one, O world-honored one, for long we have been repeating birth and death, the cycle of birth and death, yeah? We were lost in sensual pleasures and greedily took up the 5 desires. So here when we talk about sensual pleasures, we're not talking about sex. We're talking about anything that pleases the senses. Touch, vision, sound, right? Because samsara is feeding, hanging on to, clinging to the sensations of life. Enlightenment is about experiencing the driving force, the moment-to-moment accomplishment, instantiation, and movement, momentum, which with it leaves, comes, is, leaves, comes, is, leaves, comes, is, leaves, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. Watching not only what is it, but observing its constant renewal and perishing without clinging and craving. So really there's no sense in calling it birth and death. It's not that. That's part of the illusion. Right? Believing every moment instantiates and then dies off is in itself a kind of clinging and craving, is it not? So what we're trying to do is experience the waves on the ocean without lamenting or expecting new waves. It's just the field of life, the momentum of life, the ocean. That makes sense? Perhaps I should talk about that a little bit more in here, right? It's just the cycle of birth and death. Being released from the cycle of birth and death isn't that birth and death don't happen in the physical realm, but that's not where life is. Where life is, like light, is in the radiation of the energy in transformation from quiescence to form. Observing the formations moment to moment to moment to moment is the engine of life. Well, it is life. The engine is the energy in transformation, making itself known, expressed. Karma. One who is not mother is taken as mother, not sister as sister, not female as female, and not beings as beings. Because of this, transmigration proceeds, and one suffers from birth and death, or the cycle of birth and death. I gotta correct that. This is like one intoxicated lying in defilement. O Buddha, please give us the medicine of the Dharma, and let us vomit up the vile drinks of illusion. We are not yet awakened. Why, O Buddha, do you mean to abandon us and enter nirvana? I have a couple of words here. One might respond to this constant litany, whining, with perhaps that you come to this very realization finally. Shakyamuni has given already the method, the tools to awaken the mind of Tathagata potential for all living beings to attain the Buddha experience via the Lotus Dharma teaching. All that these monks need to do is apply themselves to it, just as was suggested above. Remember, when we use the word Dharma here, or when we read it, it says, give us the medicine of the Dharma. What they're actually asking for, Dharma, being the actual experience of it. Like remember that cool trick where he radiates light out to everyone? He's sharing an experience of the experience of Dharma, the Dharma experience, the Buddha-ness. And still to this day, as this was recorded, and even today there are some sects that continue to expect that this is something given to you. That the only way you'll ever be enlightened is for a Buddha to come to you and give it to you. This is a core maddening insult of misunderstanding. Buddha is already there. It's part of who and what you are. It needs not, it cannot be given, right? Or taken. O world-honored one, there may be a man, for example, who may praise the plantain tree and say that it is hard stuff. But this is not so. The same with beings. O world-honored one, we may praise and say that people, beings, life, nursing up, intellect, doer, and recipient are all true. But this cannot be. Thus, we practice non-self. By this practice of non-self, do they not, by those very words, indicate their strong attachment to self? They're admitting it. Words are tricky. All right. O world-honored one, it is as in the case of water, in which rice has been washed, or the case of dregs, which are of no use any more. The same with the body, too. It has no self or master. For example, O world-honored one, the plant, Saptaparna, has no fragrance. It is thus with this carnal body. It has no self and no master. Thus, we meditate on selflessness. You, Shakyamunibuddha, say, quote, all things have no self and nothing belongs to self. O you bhikshus, learn and practice this. End quote. Once this is practiced, self-conceit goes away. Self-conceit gone, one enters nirvana. O world-honored one, no tracks of birds exist in the sky. Such can never be. One practicing selflessness meditation can have no various views of life. Nothing such as this is possible. There's this idea that runs throughout the writings of Buddhism of this non-self, this anatman, this non-entity is somehow an erasure of being. But the self is not being. The self is a samsaric creation of craving and clinging. Being, truly being, requires only the mind. But where does the mind come from? Well, in this moment, in this lifetime, you have this precious opportunity given this complex body, and this is the real value of the body, that we want to attach all this meaning of self to. Stop it. It's all an apparatus to experience momentum of karmic identity, but that identity immediately explodes into the identity of all things. So is it identity, or is it just realization, enlightenment, like the light I was talking about earlier, right? There is no light on its own. Look at the history of the cosmos, which is facing many questions these days, right? If you follow science, cosmology, the Webb telescope. Enlightenment requires samsara. Irony, huh? But you can't confuse the two. You can't say, and Shakyamuni never says, you must extinguish this samsaric existence in order to experience nirvana, enlightenment. No. What he in fact says is you must disconnect from the samsaric clinging and craving. Don't erase it. Simply release it and observe it as a separate entity, if you will, and be amazed at its confluence and its encapsulation of all of life, the momentum of it. You should feel a little, maybe, and I've heard this from some of you, when you first get the main aha moment, usually happens in front of your Butsudan. When you're chanting fervently, something has to change. You're in a moment of crisis. Seems to be what we need as human beings in order to profoundly introspect and demand our Buddha-ness to break open our Buddha eye, our Gohonzon mind. That sometimes you get queasy. You get a little sick to your stomach. It's like sitting, if you're not comfortable in the back seat of a car for a long period of time. You get that motion sickness. Yeah, because you suddenly feel it. You're in it. And it almost draws you in. It's profound. Once you gain your equilibrium, life is forever changed, yeah? Then the world-honored one praised all the bhikshus. He said, it's good. It is good that you practice the selflessness meditation, right? Because you're getting there. You're learning something. So he's always, sometimes he's very stern because monks can be stubborn. Not you and I, of course. But he's always careful to say, that's a good question. Let's go from that, right? Always trying to lead to enlightenment. No matter, well, most of the time, no matter how ignorant the question is. But don't get me wrong, we've read several things where Shakyamuni is like, right? Then all the bhikshus said to Shakyamunibuddha, we not only practice the selflessness meditation, but even other meditations, to wit, all of those on suffering, the non-eternal or within time, and the selflessness. O world-honored one, when intoxicated, the mind spins around, and all mountains, rivers, castles, palaces, and sun, moon, and stars appear to spin around too. O world-honored one, any person who does not practice the meditation of the non-eternal or within time and selflessness cannot be called a sage, or a monk for that matter. Due to indolence, one repeats the cycle of birth and death. O world-honored one, because of this, we all practice such meditations. Okay, you want your merit badge now? It's a little over the top, don't you think? But okay, I guess they're really happy that they got acknowledged. That's okay. Then Shakyamuni-Buddha said to all the bhikshus, quote, hear me well. In other words, listen up. Now you mention the case of an intoxicated person. Oh. This refers to knowledge, but not the signification. What does he mean by that? What do I mean by signification? The intoxicated person sees the sun and moon, which do not move, but he thinks they do. Well, we know everything moves, but you understand what he's saying. There it is, the moon. But when you're drunk, right? That's what he's talking. That's what the monks just told him. The same is the case with beings. Notice he doesn't say humans. He doesn't say, he says with beings, because we are all being. We're not a thing. We're a verb. We're expressing our karma, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. The same is true with all beings. As all illusion and ignorance overhang the mind turns upside down and takes self for not self, eternal or outside of time for non-eternal or within time. Do you understand when I say that? I've said it several times now, and I hope you understand. The idea of something that's eternal has with it the implication that it's unaffected by time. So that's outside of the realm of time, which is a samsaric delusion. Whereas non-eternal where's another word for non-eternal here? Anyway, non-eternal segregates whatever you're classifying as non-eternal as within the parameters of time. It's that simple. All right, continuing. Purity as non-purity, bliss as sorrow, overhung by illusion, this thought arises. This thought arises. Though this thought arises, the meaning is not gained or realized. Or you could say experienced. This is as in the case of the intoxicated person who takes what does not move as moving. The self signifies Shakyamunibuddha. The eternal, or outside of time, signifies the Dharmakaya, the Tathagata field, right? One of the three bodies of Buddha. Keep that in mind. I note that in here. Bliss signifies nirvana, and the pure signifies the Dharma. So and I have a note in here, you can read it. He's just chose another way of explaining the three bodies of Buddha. Their experiences. And they all happen at once. Bhikshus, why is it said that one who has the idea of a self is arrogant and haughty, traversing round samsara? Bhikshus, although you might say, quote, we also cultivate impermanence, suffering, and non-self, these three kinds of cultivation have no real value or meaning. I shall now explain the excellent three ways of cultivating Dharma. Right? So he's picking at the language, the words they're using, because he knows it's not the words or the language that he has a problem with, but he senses their attachment to the thingification of their practice. They're not digging a little deeper to sense the experience, the momentum of enlightenment. They're just identifying it as stages, like reading an experience of racing an Indy car a Formula One car in a book is enough to teach you or to actually sense the experience of driving in a Formula One car. No, I don't think so. To think, he continues, of suffering as bliss, and to think of bliss as suffering, is perverse dharma. You're using words to say we trade one for another, but there is no trade. There is enlightenment, the light's on, and samsara, ignorance, the light is off. They're not opposites. I mean, the light off and the light on, you could say one is an obstacle to the other. They're not opposites. Do you see what I'm saying? He goes on, to think of the impermanent as eternal, and to think of the eternal as impermanent is perverse dharma. Dharma being experience. To experience this flip-flop isn't the goal. The flip-flop occurs due to the experience. Does the stuff in the attic that you're tripping over in the dark become real when the light goes on? Or has it been there all along? The light doesn't make it so. The light provides for you to see what has been there all along. To think of the non-self, anatman, as the self, atman, and to think of the self, atman, as the non-self, anatman, is perverse dharma. You're twisting the experience. It's not that you annihilate and leave, destroy, erase the self. It still exists. It's just that your commitment, your sentient mind's attachment, clinging, craving to everything that has to do with your idea of self, and it is unfathomable, all of the things you have attached to the idea of self, right? It's the attachment. You're not erasing anything. You're just no longer occupied mentally by it. You can watch it as a fascination rather than an identification. You see why I use that word all the time? Identification. It's a tricky thing and a profound idea. And lastly, to think of the impure as the pure and to think of the pure as impure is again a perverse dharma. It's not about something being good or bad. It's about your idea, your attachment, your clinging to the idea of good or bad. Right? Is the moon good or bad? It's the moon. Whoever has these four kinds of perversion, that person does not know the correct cultivation of dharmas. Bhikshus, you give rise to the idea of bliss with regard to phenomena associated with suffering, the idea of eternity with regard to phenomena associated with impermanence, the idea of the self with regard to the phenomena of without self, and the idea of purity with regard to phenomena that are impure. Both the mundane and also the supramundane have the eternal bliss, the self, and the purity. Nothing changes but your perception, your insight, your, say it with me, enlightenment. Mundane teachings, dharmas, have letters and are without meaning, reference, or experience. The supramundane teachings have letters and meaning. Why? Because mundane people have these four perversions. They are unacquainted with the true meaning, reference, experience. Why? Having these perverse ideas, their minds and vision are distorted. Through these three perversions, mundane people see suffering and bliss, impermanence and eternity, non-self in the self, and impurity in the pure. These are called perversions. They're inversions. Inversions implies things. So you're still playing in the sandbox of samsara. Because of these perversions, inversions, mundane people know the letters but not the meaning, the reference. What is the meaning? The referent. Non-self is samsara. The self is Buddha in mundane mental experience of Tathagata. Okay, I need to say that again, huh? The non-self is samsara. So all the ideas we have about our identity in the world, from our name to the vision in the mirror, to what we own, to who we know, everything that amalgamates our idea of being, ironically, is not truly being. So we could say that being is not being and non-being is being. And that's confusing. So we have to disassemble that. What we consider identity, we consider being, but it's not. Identity is samsara. Being is cosmotic. It's universal. It's the experience of the momentum of life. From a vantage point of being enlightened. No longer a self, no longer an individual identified self, but a self, and the language gets in the way here, a self, a location in the momentum of energy that witnesses the constant churning of karma, expressing and moving and taking medications. Isn't that fascinating? So, non-self is samsara because that's delusion. It's what we think is self, but it is not. And the self, if we're looking for a real experience of being, is Buddha in mundane mental experience of Tathagata. In other words, using the sentient mind to transcend that samsaric clinging and craving of identity. Next, impermanence is the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas, and the eternal is Tathagata's Dharmakaya. Interesting point. Impermanence is the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas. It's you monks working on dislodging your identification with the physical realm, including self, and the eternal, not the opposite of that, not the inversion of that, but experiencing Tathagatanas, Buddhahood. Detachment, without worrying about the fact that it's detachment, it simply occurs. You see life as the light rather than the construct, and you observe the constructs with fascination, but that dislodging of the construct allows you to objectively witness, observe, and therefore move with it with intelligence, with knowledge, real knowledge. Right? Thirdly, suffering is all non-Buddhist heretics. Bliss is nirvana. If you don't understand, or you're not working on understanding, as you monks are, well, that's suffering. Remember the Four Noble Truths? First one, all life is suffering. All life is dukkha. Why does he say that? Because life isn't simply aware of itself. Being aware of itself is a potential. Tathagata field. It's a potential. But that potential must be expressed. Without expression, dukkha. It's just that simple. The impure is all compounded samskrata dharmas. The pure is the true dharma that Shakyamunibuddha and bodhisattvas have. Enlightenment. It's not there's pure and impure. It's that the impure is the compounded, right? Mara, tarakutanamao, all of the different verbiage we have around identification, and it's endless. And being able to set all that apart, that's the pure, quote unquote, we're talking about. It's enlightenment. It's not that one inverts into the other. The one stays, but the perception changes. This is called non-perversion, non-inversion. By not giving in or being inverted in one's views, one will know both the letter and the meaning. Ah, now this makes sense. If one desires to be freed from the four perversions or inverted views, one should know the eternal or outside of time, blissful, the self, and the pure in this manner. Wow. Paradigm shift, yeah? All right. I think that's going to be it for today. It's about all the energy I have. I apologize. Okay, in this pure manner. All right. There's never any good ending spot with these. It just goes on and on and on. But this was good. I needed this. Thank you so much for participating, for being here. Thank you for your practice. Right? Like and subscribe, please. Patrons, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. All of you, bodhisattvas, monks certainly, but everything you do from liking these videos to purchasing books or seeing, helping support this Sangha on Patreon or through PayPal. Reggie, thanks for waking me up. Mel, all of you, Mr. Fulkerson, I owe all of you a great debt of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for your practice. And with that, please take care of your health. Remain strong. Savor your practice. Savor it. Take your time. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.